Okay, hi Maria.
Hello, Heidi.
One of the tools that in your toolkit is called Romancing the Ordinary. Before we explore that, I'd love for you to read out the wonderful quote that you sent me, because I think that will frame what we're going to talk about in a beautiful way.
Sure, Heidi. It's an honor to do so. Thanks for the chance to connect with this practice in the public. So, women were created to experience, interpret, revel in, and unravel the mysteries of life. Through their senses, our senses speak the secret of language of the soul, longing. If there's anything every woman understands, whether she's single or married, 18 or 80, is the dialect of desire. Emotion is the feminine mother tongue.
Isn't that gorgeous? And that's so true. So true. So, what exactly is romancing the ordinary?
I think each person will certainly find their own interpretation of that. But the woman whose work brought it to life for me described it as the spiritualization of the five senses. Our experience of reality through the body and our senses allows us to come into full connection with the miracle of life. And so, romancing the ordinary is really summoning that spiritual connection through the five senses with the world around us.
That's gorgeous. So, can you give me some examples of how this works in your life?
I think that for me, coming to these examples has almost been difficult because it's become such a way of life. Um, Essentially, having lived an experience where I was experiencing deep dissatisfaction, there was something about the irony of that moment to realize that I was indeed living a privileged life, but not experiencing privilege. And the practice for me has now been about creeping into those moments that are the most mundane, whether we're focused on chores or the in between moments, standing in queues at a supermarket, um, or sitting down with a list to try and understand what the day holds, is just picking up on things like smells. Or what about that moment is the fulfillment of a desire for you. So much of our life is stretched out along the path of striving in modern life. And for me, there's no point of fulfillment in that approach to life. So, romancing the ordinary has been about constantly arriving. So, whatever moment is standing in front of you, is to connect with it in a way that says, how is this the fulfillment of something for me? And that can be anything from sipping a cup of coffee to engaging with a friend on the phone or having a meeting at work, and just understanding that there is some fulfillment in that moment for you, of another form of striving from the past, and then engaging with that fully. So it may amount to the smell of coffee, which for me is something quite ecstatic, or the sound of birds, or the clear sunshine through a cloud after many days of rain.
Yeah.
So yeah, the examples are countless.
Sounds so simple, but and yet the engagement to a completely different level from the sounds of it. So, how might our listeners use it in their day-to-day life?
For me, it starts with asking simple questions of yourself. I think I may have even uttered some already. The the question for me that has been most useful is, how is this a fulfillment of a desire I've had in the past, this moment? That became quite an important point of ownership, I think. Um, Romancing the ordinary is about engaging with the miracle of life and recognizing that for all the miracles that we wish for and pray for, we're living one right now. And many sacrifices are made by others for you to enjoy the pleasures that you enjoy, which may now even seem, rote. And I think it's in asking oneself how sacrifices of others have led to your moment of fulfillment that also allows you to engage more closely with the sentiment that there's everything is working in your favor constantly. Um, so for me, romancing the ordinary and shaping it as part of your life is engaging with what those moments of fulfillment are.
Okay. So, how did it turn your life around?
I realized so much of the injection of romancing the ordinary shifted the relationship that I was having with work, whether it be work in a professional sense or work in just in terms of looking after myself and my home and my family. Being active meant being drained and not charged or somehow fulfilled. And there was always this striving for rest or striving for relaxation or striving for enjoyment beyond the moment of so-called work. And for me, the shift in accommodating the romancing of the ordinary was about allowing each of those moments to be a juicy fruit in and of themselves, and allowing them to charge me in whatever way possible, and realizing that a lot of the world that we come from divorces us from our senses. So in many ways, we're operating outside of our full capacity where those five senses are concerned. And it really opened up my body to an experience of life, because I was suddenly smelling life, and I was seeing the full technicolors of life and not just the traffic lights.
Yes. Yes.
And for me, it really was about the expanse of awareness around how we are built as a massive receptor. And it is the blocks that we place in front of ourselves by not really activating ourselves as receptors that limit us in our ability to experience the full abundance of life. There's nothing that we need to go and get. There's nothing that we need to fetch.
Yeah. Yes.
In order to experience abundance. And in fact, we're prone to accumulation and drowning in what we're acquiring.
Yes.
So this is also about clearing, having a moment of stopping to literally smell the coffee or the roses, to literally engage the senses.
And appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is where you start finding spaces in yourself that you didn't know were there, like a poet.
Yes.
Or you suddenly start understanding things like classical music that you may have felt were out of your reach or outside of your comprehension before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's those pieces of art that were created in a state of full sensory fulfillment and ecstasy. But until you're experiencing that yourself, there's no way for you to fully engage the offerings of others in those spaces. And I'm talking about an offering of a farmer, never mind an artist.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It can be anything.
It's like it's enlightenment, isn't it? And it's consciousness. It's raising all of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it's placing fulfillment right literally under your nose or in front of you. And at some point I found that I had a sort of ritual around apologizing to God for not having taken full stock of the things that were there for me before, in the fullness of how they came about.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I've even gotten to the point where I enjoy seeing insects in the house. I feel like, you know, there's some weird divorce happening between us in me having put up walls and floors to keep them out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm delighted because this practice has turned your life of dissatisfaction into magic. It's like full-blown magical moments. So thank you for sharing this. And I'm going to explore this even more in my life, because in some ways, I feel like I have, but not been doing it enough. You've mentioned the best-selling author to me. Is there anything that you want to sort of share from that perspective?
I think, well, it's an interesting surname. I just need to get the pronunciation right. Sarah Ban Breathnach. I think it's a Scottish surname, if I'm not mistaken, or
Okay,
Gaelic.
sounds like it could be.
And I've read this book and her other one, Simple Abundance. And I think what she's managed to do is step outside of the more inaccessible philosophy around Buddhism and minimalism, and bring the expression of those capabilities into a modern context and a day-to-day existence of Westerners. And so there's a lot of enjoyment to be sort of gained from reading her books. You don't have to read them cover to cover.
Okay.
But she brings a sort of poetry to the the day to day, and I've used a lot of what she's advocated in clearing my life. So the abundance that I'm feeling from her is really the ability to actually let go of
Oh,
things.
yeah.
And Simple Abundance is a shorter read. It holds much of the same sentiment.
Okay.
But she's wonderful to listen to. So you can look up interviews with her on podcasts, which are also wonderful, where she's talking about her book and what led to the writing, which is also very inspiring, sometimes more so than the books themselves.
I think letting go is one of the biggest problems that we have, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why we all get stuck, because we can't let go of things. Even just the thoughts that sometimes run through your mind, you just can't let those go.
Yeah, and she respects our clinging, and she introduces ways to let go. So Simple Abundance also talks about, for instance, well, in the scenario where my dog passed, one of her practices was the using photography to document the possessions of those whose spirit is still encased in those objects, and allowing the photography to lend full expression to those objects, which then should allow you to then let go of them. And it was really interesting because I think one of her own clients had framed these images of her dog's toys in these beautiful big black and white gallery style images. And for me, that wasn't saying that you have to clear things out. It was saying that we're taking the concept of this imbued spirituality of this object, and we're really celebrating it one step further instead of putting it into a dark closet, but allowing the letting go of that physically to release you from the clinging to the memory.
Yes.
And rather celebrating, and I loved that kind of transformative capability that she brings.
Yes, because that's actually about the letting go and then the stepping forward, isn't it?
Absolutely, and not forgetting.
Yes.
Because the practice that she kind of alerted me to was one of remembrance, which uh, it allows you to disconnect from that clinging feeling of missing someone.
Yeah.
And not that you'll ever forget, and not that you'll not have moments of missing them.
No, it's the joy of the romance of the memory.
Yeah, that you can actually now engage with something of them and smile some more.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Maria.
Thank
This has
you,
been a
Hannah.
really, really helpful and useful discussion and a fantastic tool to have in our toolkit.
I've so enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.